and welcome to the Art of Being Human. I went through some of the symptoms of PTSD, and I want to carry on from that, from the last segment, because PTSD is a real problem, and a lot of people have it, and a lot of people really suffer from it. But it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and either you have seen something traumatic or you have experienced something traumatic. I can remember that I was driving. I used to work at night, and I was at a university, and I was just going home from closing up my office at the university and then driving home, and there had been an accident a few miles, and I passed the accident. The police were already there. There's nothing I could have done. The ambulance was on its way, and there was this poor girl screaming, and she hadn't been injured, but she had a friend with her that had been injured, and she was afraid the friend was not alive anymore. I think that's what the problem was. And she kept screaming, "Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up." And there was no response. I don't know if the girl died. I don't know if she was just unconscious or what, but an ambulance was on its way, the police were there, and that poor woman was just screaming and calling out the girl's name, "Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up." Now, this is something that she could get PTSD from, because this is something you can't unthink. And this is something that you can't unremember, you know. And so I thought about her, and I thought about how difficult it was going to be. I don't know who caused the accident. I don't remember whether it was a one-car accident, but whatever it was a traumatic effect. Now, sometimes combat, rape, assault, seeing somebody die, abuse experienced or seen, life-threatening illnesses, chronic illnesses, an accident, either seeing an accident or being in an accident, or a dysfunctional family where you have abuse, maybe drugs, maybe alcoholism, severe pain can cause it, loss or a natural disaster can cause it. And we experience those things as human beings all the time. And it does seem like when close to a major holiday or close to a national event, it seems to get worse. And so any person who goes through any of these things could get PTSD. A child could get it, an adult could get it, and it's something that needs to be dealt with, and it's something that could be healable. So a lot of people who have a lot of anxiety have seen something that they can't unsee. Now you've got to remember this, the brain records everything. And if you remember something, you know, it records everything. It's like a recording device. And when you start to remember something that's painful, you not only remember the event itself, but given enough time, you're also going to remember the emotions and re-experience the emotions that you had when it occurred. Supposing a child was abused at age 10. Well, what would happen at age 10? If they were abused at age 10, then they could get PTSD out of it. And what would happen is, if they remembered the abuse, now sometimes you don't remember it. Sometimes the worst things can happen and you don't remember it. But if she remembers anything that's close to that abuse, she's going to experience all the emotions that went with it. The fear, the anger, the helplessness, she's going to remember it all. She's reliving, or he's reliving, whatever the case may be, the past pain that they experienced way back when that abuse occurred, or that accident occurred, or whatever it was that they experienced that caused them to have PTSD to begin with. And whatever you are thinking about, your brain thinks of it as being the truth. Now, the brain is just an organ, an important organ, but just an organ. And if you're planting ideas in your brain because you're just thinking, the brain assumes the truth. You will believe, your brain will believe as truth anything that you tell it. So if anyone says, okay, I gotta leave, there's a fire, I may not have time to get out. What does the brain record? Fire, trapped. If you're going to take a test and you're afraid that you're going to fail it, then what's the brain record? Uh-oh, I failed the test. You haven't even taken it yet. Well, yeah, I'm going to fail it. I know I'm going to fail it. And you believe that is truth. Now, it may not be that you can trust all the feelings that you have. People feel different ways about different things. And if they're not open to maybe changing their mind or re-experiencing things, then, you know, you're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck feeling and believing things that your brain can't unthink and can't undo. So if you're putting in your brain, I'm gonna get this illness, I'm gonna die from this illness, the brain says that's the truth, and you believe it. You actually believe it. Why? Because you've told your brain that's it. And the brain doesn't have the discernment to know the difference between a real and an imagined thing. Now, when I was doing a lot of therapy with people, I used to have to explain to them knowledge of what happened is a first step that you have to have. Now, you don't have to remember everything. I know if you're going through psychoanalysis or that kind of therapy, they try to get you to remember everything. I don't think that's necessary. I think you need to know enough. You need to remember enough to know of the existence of what happened, and if it happened multiple times or if it happened once, and what it was. But beyond that, you don't have to remember each incident. Your brain is very good at pressing it down into the subconscious so that you will be forced to forget it. And then you deal with your life, but occasionally it comes up again because it hasn't truly been resolved. So the brain looks for ways to bring it up again. And then you get your fear, your anger, your anxiety, your nervousness, your depression. Only to you, you think it's coming out of the blue, but there is no such thing as a symptom without a cause. So supposing you have been abused, or you have been tortured, or you were in warfare and they did terrible things to you, or you saw it on TV, in your memory it's there. You may not be totally conscious of the fact that it's there because we do have devices in our brain to force forget things. But it causes changes in your brain, and then when it starts to come up again, whether you remember the whole thing or the part of it, or whether you don't remember it at all, something comes up enough again to be recognized, and you get whatever emotions that happened at the time, you experience them again. You are reliving your past pain, and that's exactly what I call it. That's not the scientific name for it, of course, but I do call it that, and when I'm dealing with clients, I talk to them about that. You are re-experiencing your past pain, but your past pain shouldn't be what's going on in the present, so you have to do more than just remember it. You have to relearn, you have to act on it, you have to do something different. Just having a knowledge of what happened isn't enough to cure it. It is a first step, however, because if you can acknowledge that it exists, then you can work with it and make a change. And there are various new therapeutic techniques that make that a lot easier, and it makes it so that what you look at when you start to think of it is you think of a distant thing that happened. But the emotions don't have to haunt you. It was there, it will be there, but it's not going to cause you any distress. It's past history. And so some new therapeutic methods are used for that, and they have been quite successful. I do have other things in mind that I'm searching out to see how successful they are. But one of them is called havening. And I have gone over that, you know, in maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I did a little segment on it. But at any rate, you need to remember that what you're experiencing comes from something. There's no such thing as a symptom without a cause. So if you're having any of these things, you're back from warfare, you're in the service, but you know, you're having PTSD, and whenever whatever happens to you, you get scared, and it's like you're going to be shot at, or something else is going to happen. My twin sister was in her house. We were talking. I was here. She was there. We were just talking for a phone call. We could call each other frequently. And all of a sudden, someone was trying to break into her house, and she was terrified. I gotta go, Pat, I gotta go. I said, call the police. Well, it turned out to be a soldier who was in Vietnam, and he had a PTSD reaction, and for a while, he thought he was back in Vietnam. He thought he was fighting the fight again, and he was gonna get and destroy whatever he had to destroy to keep himself safe, and he chose my sister's house. He thought it was someplace he was supposed to run to. And she may have been the enemy. The police got him in time, and he was put into treatment for it. And she was, after that, she was in no danger. She called me back, and she said, this is what happened. He's a Vietnam veteran. He was having a flashback, and he thought he was back in the war again. You know, I've seen people who have PTSD. They hear a loud sound, and they jump. You know, they jump like 3 feet. Why? Because they experienced that kind of thing in the service, and now that they're back, you can't drop a pin but what they're afraid of it, because it may be something else. Who knows? It might be a gunshot. And so they experience that, but it's treatable, it's healable, but it takes time to do that. So you have to remember that when you are having all kinds of reactions of fear and anxiety, and if you are having fear, you're likely to have anxiety. They're almost the same thing. And you're likely also to have depression. They go along together. And so therefore, it has to be handled. And PTSD is a serious problem, and people have it. So panic, uneasiness, fear and anxiety, nervousness, you know, they all go together. They all kind of blend together, and it can make you very uneasy. With panic is where you have that sensation like you're crawling out of your skin. I don't know how to describe it, but anyone who's had panic knows what I'm talking about. You know, it's like you're crawling out of your skin. You're terrified. You know, you got to do something or go someplace. You got to get relief. Now, you also have to remember that there are different degrees of anxiety. Anxiety can be unpleasant. It can be vague. It can be feeling that something bad is almost ready to happen. It's like a premonition. Oh, I can't go out today. It's going to be bad. I have those feelings, and it's going to be bad. I just know it's going to be bad. And it has a flavor of, I can pre-tell that something bad is going to happen. What is it going to be? Well, I don't know. But something's going to happen, and it's not going to be good. And so therefore, I just have to get away from it. So fear is a reaction to a specific stimulus. It has that right now kind of feeling. If I have a right now kind of fearing because I'm fearful, what am I fearful of? I can probably tell you what I'm fearful of. You know, if it's a student going in for a test, well, I didn't study enough, and I'm afraid I'm going to fail. What is the brain saying? The brain is saying, you have failed, because your brain is going to believe anything that you give it as the truth. So you have to stop thinking that way. As you think, you're going to believe, because the brain is going to register it as truth. So I don't want to make this sound mechanical, but in a way, it sounds that way. I understand that. You know, the brain is like a filing cabinet. What you put in it, it stores. If you've had a bad experience, it stores it. Sometimes it lets it out. And if you come close to having a similar experience again, then you're going to have that panicked feeling that you had when it happened the first time. If you don't have a full recognition of where it came from, and you might not, because the brain represses so much, it's forced forgetting, that if you don't remember that, you may still go through the feelings, you may still go through the fears, only you don't know where they're coming from. You know, so you have to consider that It's coming from someplace. You're getting it from someplace. You're not, your brain is not free maybe to give it out. The brain is careful. The brain protects itself. I know the way that I'm phrasing it, it may not make a lot of sense, but the brain protects itself. It forces you to forget the most horrendous things that you could imagine. I will ask people, have you ever been abused? Oh, no, not me, when I know full well that they have been, because they've got all the symptoms. But they don't recognize it. They don't recognize it. They'd say things like, oh, if I was, I would have remembered that. No, you wouldn't remember that because the brain force forgets. And as you force forget it, you lose it in your subconscious somewhere. But the thing is, it can come out in different kinds of ways. If you can't deal with it directly because it's too difficult to deal with, then you deal with it in kind of a side fashion. It just kind of creeps up somehow. Feelings of panic and anxiety and depression, and why do I feel this way, and I don't feel good, and my life has no meaning, and all of this. And it's coming from a place you don't remember where the original problem was. But it doesn't matter where the original problem was. The fact of the matter is you're experiencing those symptoms. So what do you as a person want to do? Get rid of the symptoms. People self-medicate all the time. They're using drugs all the time. Why? So they won't feel the horribleness of the anxiety and the depression that they're feeling. And remember, depression and anxiety go along together. If you have one, you're likely to have both, and we are going to be getting into depression. Now, in this days of pandemic, how are you going to feel? What are you going to be afraid of? The anticipatory anxiety, where you're fearing something's going to happen, and it could happen. It's not completely fanciful. It could happen. That's the most difficult kind of panic that you're going to have. Anticipatory anxiety. I might lose my job. Part of the shop is shutting down because of the virus. So some of us are going to be laid off. I might be one of them. We're going to lose 10 people, the boss said. I might be one of them. I'm very nervous about it. What am I going to do about money? Unemployment only lasts so long. Can I ever get another job? Can I ever get another job like this? Those are very, very real fears. And those are the fears that might happen. That's anticipatory anxiety. But it also can touch base with things that have happened before in your life that you could have forgotten about, because repression forces the body to forget the worst of the abuse. And so the combination of the two, one brings up the other, and then you have a lot of anxiety. And this is what we're seeing in the pandemic. We're seeing people very anxious, very scared. It's close to Christmas. They don't know what they're going to do about getting children toys for Christmas. Children are afraid that Santa's going to get sick and he can't make deliveries, Now, when my little nephew had this problem that he had, there wasn't a problem of sickness, but somehow someone had told him that Santa didn't have much money this year, and we kind of fixed that up. So, but the children in this day and age, their parents might get sick. Who's going to take care of them? Who's going to take care of me if my mother gets sick? She's the only one working. My father's disabled. He can't work. Who's going to take care of us? And it's a real possibility that it might happen, that something might happen, because people do get it. People do die from it. And some people just recover. So, we're entering into a phase of history where people are very anxious. And this is the reason why I want to get back to this again. What can you do to help the anxiety? Well, what you can do is remember that the brain does not know the difference between a real and an imagined situation. If you're thinking, I might get laid off, the brain is assuming you've been laid off. If you're thinking that our company might close, your brain is thinking your company closed, which makes the anxiety 10 times worse because you're expecting something to happen that could happen, even though it hasn't happened yet. And when it hasn't happened yet, that doesn't mean the anxiety goes away, because there's still that possibility that it's going to happen. And how are you going to deal with it? You know, you have to kind of take your mind off from it and give yourself a break and talk to yourself, self-talk, in a little different way. Not, I'm going to lose my job. There's a chance I might lose my job, but there's an even great chance that I won't. I probably will be safe. No, I can't be 100% sure of that, but I probably will be safe because my position is such that it's important that I be here. You know, and so you can work around it, think in a different way, speak to yourself in a different way. If you're talking to yourself, which we all do just by our attitudes and our beliefs and all of that, we all do, and we're saying, well, you know what, this could happen, that could happen, I could die, you know, and you just have to think different. You have to think, yes, you could, but there's a good possibility that you won't. There's a good possibility that you'll be provided with another job, maybe not exactly like you had before. There's a good chance your company's going to reopen. There's a good chance you're not going to be laid off. But as long as we're thinking about calamity all the time, then that's going to stress us out, and the blood pressure goes up, and the fear goes up. And then what do we do about it? We live with it. And I think there's a different way of handling it. It's a possibility. You know, if I walk into a lion's cage, there's a possibility I'm going to get attacked. So I don't think about going into a lion's cage. If I have to, I'll stay outside the lion's cage. There's nothing that's going to force me in. There's nothing that's going to force me to think in terms of everyday calamities. I could drop dead tomorrow. Yeah, I could. I don't expect to, you know, I really don't expect to. So you think about this, and you think about it in a different way, in a more positive way. And you have to think of it in a little different way. Otherwise, you can be consumed with all of this anxiety. And this is what we are experiencing as a nation now. So my time is almost up, and I'm going to close it here, but we're going to continue with this next time. So please join me then.